Okay, it is noon, so I think we'll go ahead and get started with our Friday afternoon CEO office hours calls. So this is Michelle McNerney. Thank you all for joining us today. And let me just go through our beginning slides, my email address, which I think you all have by now. The purpose of why we're here, just to continue to provide technical assistance and offer you all a space to coordinate with each other and learn from previous experiences. Today we have really two main objectives. I sent out this morning, a couple hours ago, 3 service provider RFP templates. So hot off the presses, they were just finalized late last night. And so we're going to review that again and then also discuss the FY21 funding allotments for adults in DW and sort of upcoming steps for that. And then I have a slide about just the next steps for the next several months of the things that we'll be working on. So as a reminder, the deadline for the majority of you all as CEOs, your key timeline and tasks has come and gone on September 1st. I think most of you are well on your way to accomplishing all of these things already or very soon. So great job. I figured I'd just continue to leave this slide on here as a reminder of the things that we've been working on and yet to have done. So one of the things that I have started to work on pretty diligently is the local board membership composition and approval and certification of the local boards. So I'm starting to go through those. One thing I would ask is that when you send those over to me with the nomination forms, it would be great if you could fill out the local board composition sheet for me. If not, I do have to take the time to do that because that's the way I can determine if all the rules for the right percentages and things like that are being met. So if you can't, not a problem. I will take care of that and get you back some feedback. I'm hoping to have the rest of the boards done by next week. So, and then followed very shortly by local board training. So I know that we had initially scheduled some local board trainings for the end of September and then into October. Obviously, we're not going to probably be able to utilize those September dates, which is fine. I've spoken to Mayor about that, and they're willing to change those dates for us, as always, being the awesome partners that they are. So we will make sure that everyone has plenty of time to schedule those local board trainings and notice to all of those board members and things like that. So we'll continue to work on that going forward. The first thing that I want to talk about today is the Title I service provider RFP. So just go forward here. So what I emailed out to you this morning, and if you didn't get it, let me know. I can resend it or check my email address, things like that, is 3 separate templates, okay? The first template is a combined RFP for all service providers, so adult, dislocated worker, and youth together. The second one is a revamped, sort of updated version of the adult and dislocated worker service provider template. And then the third one is a service provider template, RFP template for Title I youth services. So you really have 2 options. You can do an RFP for all 3 together, or you can do 2 separate RFPs where you do adult, dislocated worker and then youth as separate. That's a local area decision. So we have provided you templates to be able to do that however you so choose. The adult and dislocated worker service provider template was updated to reflect the new combined and youth, just so that they're all consistent. So nothing major, but those are all sent out this morning. So just briefly, some things you need to know. As a reminder from the chart we just looked at, all local areas are required to have competitively procured all of their service providers and have those in place by January 1st of 2021. So hopefully these templates will help you in doing that. Doing the service provision RFP is really a joint task that should be undertaken between the CEOs and the local board. Also, probably heavily involved with your board staff. So hopefully you have some people in place that can help you with that. Again, our state policy does require competitive procurement for all service providers. And just another quick reminder, you are not required to use the template that we're providing you. This is just a tool that we are providing to help out as much as we can and to give you some ideas for best practices you might possibly want to include in your RFP. The templates are written generically, so they do need to be customized to the local area that's using them, Most of the places, I think, if not all, are highlighted in red where you need to add maybe your specific local board name and things like that. So it will take some work to do some things like also switching out the state board logo to maybe your own personal local area logo, things like that. Also, within the templates, there are sections where there are blue boxes, and those are things really to just give you something to think about. So it typically will highlight a best practice that we didn't put in as a part of the template or the procurement process that's required, but gives you some information to think about in ways that you might want to, again, make your procurement more specific to your local area. So if you were going to choose to use the template as is, you would want to go through and take out all of those blue text boxes to make it a true template for you to use. And then also, you know, the really important part about this process is the information that's in the RFP is what you will use in your local area to develop your contract with your selected service provider. So it's really important that the RFP is detailed and has in it all of the information that you want to include in your contracts. As always, guys, if you have any questions along the way, just stop me. And I'm going to just go through a couple slides, and then I will bring up the RFP template and we can scroll through it as well. But just as a quick reminder, the RFP template is broken down into several sections. You have background information, the actual procurement process, the statement of work, which is really the guts of the RFP, what the proposal guidelines look like and how to apply, generic terms and conditions, and then appendices. So the first section, the background and general information, again, is some specific information about your local area. So again, this is written pretty generically. So this is an area where you could take and put in more specific information about your local area, your mission and vision, all sorts of things like that. This is also the place where you're going to indicate the period of performance for the contract, who the contact person is. Again, typically probably your staff to the board, your executive director. If you don't have an executive director or staff to the board, you're going to want to identify one person to be the point person for the RFP process. And there's also information about funding levels in this section. And so what IWD can do in this process is provide you the funding amount, and then what you'll have to do locally is decide how much of that funding available to the local area is what you want to be bid on and contracted out for. Section 2, again, the procurement process and requirements. This is where you're going to outline what's expected of the bidders and how that procurement will happen. We have written this template to include a bidders conference to answer any questions that bidders may have. Again, that's one way to run a procurement, and if your local area chooses to run a procurement in a different way, that's a choice you can make, and you can remove that or anything like that. But that's basically the general information that's in section 2. And again, section 3, the statement of work, is really where, like I said before, the guts of the procurement is. And this is the section where you're going to really outline what you want service providers to do in regards to how they will provide adult dislocated worker and youth services within your local area. In the combination, the adult DW youth procurement, which is the example that I'm going to use, there's 2 separate sections. We're going to have an adult DW program design section and a youth program design section. And the reason that is because the policies at a federal level and therefore then at a state level are not the same for how services are provided to adult DW and youth participants. So it's important to make sure that you're outlining those distinctions in how the programs operate within their RFP, so that the bidders know what would be expected of them based on the types of services they're bidding on. So, and then what I've done is with the adult DW template and then the separate youth template is essentially take out the opposite. So the youth template only has the youth program design information within the statement of work, and the adult DW only has the adult DW. The other sections are pretty static, no matter what service we're talking about, adult DW or youth. So integrated services, how you're wanting outreach and branding to look, how people should be enrolled in the program. Again, the adult DW youth program design sections. career pathways, which are the same regardless of the type of service you're doing, what the expected performance indicators are that the local service providers will have to meet, how staff training and development should happen, data management and reporting, and the use of the Iowa Works data management system and reporting. Again, that's a good section for you all to be able to specify how you want to communicate with the service provider that's selected, how often you want them to give you information, what type of information they want to you want to have provided to the board, things like that. And then also the contracts and oversights and evaluation section. One thing specifically I want to point out about the contract and oversight section is some language regarding subcontractors. So this is pretty specific, and you know, it's a local area decision about whether you want to allow the entity who's bidding on the RFP to be able to use subcontractors to actually provide those services. And the way that we have designed this RFP template is that if the bidder intends to use service providers, then they need to tell you about that as a part of their response to the RFP and be pretty specific about who that subcontractor is and what part of the services they're going to provide. So that's built into this template and is something for you all to consider as you move forward and work on your RFPs. Section 4, the proposal guidelines, will really outline how they will apply, you know, where they need to turn information in, what format it should be in, what questions they should be able to answer within their narrative, and also their budget information. It also includes information about how the RFP will be reviewed and the selection process that will be taken, including the evaluation criteria that could be used. The evaluation criteria that's included as an attachment that we'll go over at the end is based on the content in this RFP template. So if you choose to change the RFP template or write your own RFP, you'll also want to make sure that you go through that evaluation criteria pretty closely and make sure that it still lines up with the information that was included in the RFP. You guys probably know most of this, as this is all standard procurement process information, but just want to make sure that you have a chance to see what we've provided and ask any questions about it if possible. Section 5 is standard terms and conditions. This is where you are going to require liability insurance, which has always been an important topic as we've talked through everything over the past year. So just pointing that out. And then you'll have several appendices, the cover sheet, budget sheets, an assurances and certifications document to be signed by the appointing authority of the entity that's bidding, the evaluation criteria that I just mentioned, and then Appendix E is not included in the template, but is something that you might want to consider adding on your own when you complete the RFP. And what that would be is sort of like a document that lists out what the fixed costs are for the centers in your local area. That's information that you would provide to the bidder as an attachment for them to be able to use to complete their budget sheets when they are filling out their budget for the RFP. That is information that IWD can work with you to provide based on what's currently being expended in the local area and the centers and things like that. So again, the attachment E is not actually provided in the template, but it's something that you may want to add because it could help cut down on questions that are asked by the bidders as well. The budget summaries are pretty detailed. There's an initial sheet that has a roll-up of there's a one-pager essentially that would tell you the overall budget detail and budget summary that the bid contains, and then individual sheets that allow them, worksheets essentially, that allow them to detail out the information at a more granular level. So again, one of those sheets is a direct cost detail page. This is where you're going to talk about some of the things that it might be difficult to estimate, but IWD can work with you, especially Mike and Linda's team who are already doing this in the local areas across the state, to provide you some figures that can be used for this section. Again, the assurances and certifications is just a signatory page. And then you have the evaluation criteria, as I mentioned before. So let me jump out of this presentation really quick and I'll pull up the Sorry, now I lost my, can you guys see the Word document?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I lost my controls for the Zoom. Hopefully they come back. There we go. Okay, so again, the templates all look exactly the same, exact same format with the table of contents built in, and you can see the different sections throughout. That's a little bit weird. I'll have to fix that random line there in the middle. Just some things to point out really quickly. So there's some tables for you to fill in some information. Again, we'll have the available funds that you would summarize with some information about the requirements within those funds and what they can and can't be used for. And these are the blue boxes that I was talking about, where this is not information that's necessarily in the RFP template already, but it gives you just a point to stop and make some considerations about how you want to include information or address those types of situations within your RFP. And if you choose, you see it and you choose not to do anything with it, you would just delete this box to move on for your template, the use of the template. There's another one. You have your kind of your standard stuff here. Here's the statement of work that I was talking about with really the guts. So you have some generic information. You'll fill out the information on where the centers are in your local area. Eligibility guidelines included, so it's very clear on how they will be required to determine eligibility for participants and enroll participants. And then you'll go into the adult dislocated worker program design section, which really details out, here's the types of services that you're going to be providing, or that we want the selected bidder to provide. Here's how we want those services to be provided and co-enrolled, and all that information would be included in here. Some more boxes to think about. And then you would go into another section which has the youth program design. It's going to look a little bit different because I mentioned at the beginning how youth services are provided are a little bit different than how adult DW services are provided. So you'll have the 14 required services for youth detailed out pretty clearly here. And then you have your performance indicators. This has been updated with the PY20 negotiated rates for adult DW and youth, so it is more up-to-date information than the previous RFP template that we sent out. So you would just want to make sure you have the most up-to-date information. This is another section of the RFP where the local area really has a lot of control. These WIOA primary indicators of performance are required performance measures. You can't change these. But as a local area, you do have the ability to add additional performance requirements for your service providers if you so choose. And so that's what this blue box is going to tell you is, hey, you could think up any indicator you want for your service provider to have to meet, and you would include it in the RFP. So we've given you the blue box to point that out. We've also provided a chart that has examples of different options. In no way are you said to use every single measure within this chart, but it's just a list of options that you could decide is important for your local area. And also this highlighted section as well. So you can, one thing you could do is, well, it's the first time we're doing this as a new area. We might stick with just the basics for now. And in a couple of years, when you re-RFP, you add some additional things in. I mean, you have a lot of options there. So it's just some generic information about what would happen if the service provider that is selected does not meet the required performance negotiations, and things like that. Wording and language about the data management and records retention, which is obviously very important. And then this contract oversight and evaluation is, again, the section that has the subcontracts information in it that I discussed. I'm going to scroll down. Again, proposal guidelines, very clearly detailing out how bids should be submitted, what information should be contained in those submissions. And then let's go down to, just gonna scroll. I know this scrolling is annoying on a screen. The terms and conditions are very standard. Appendix, there you go. So Appendix A is a required cover sheet. And then you get into these budget documents. So this first one, budget summary, would really be this one-page look of the high-level costs and give you a total operational and participant cost and the total amount that the responder is requesting to provide the services. And then they get into the detailed pages of how are you detailing out, you know, how did you come to this up here, sorry, personnel and salaries, this overall number, where did it come from? So this sheet would allow them to detail that out, right? And then the detail further just continues to build as you go through these sub-budget sheets. Lori and Michelle spent a lot of time building these out, and I think they'll be very helpful for you all. So just more detail, and then also instructions for the narrative portion of their budget, the assurances page, and then finally that evaluation criteria. So again, this is really the sheet that you would use to score the proposals. Again, it's built off the information that was included above throughout the RFP. So you would want to tweak this if you tweaked anything within the template, or if you built your own, you would want to make sure that those things match up. And that is the end of the template. So is there any questions that I can answer about those for anybody? Find my controls.
Hi, Michelle. It's Miranda.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, I was going to mention you, wasn't I?
No, that's okay. I just skimmed through it and maybe I missed it, but in the budget section, did it talk anywhere about the indirect rate that they can charge if they have an approved one?
Oh, Lord, Miranda, and the indirect rate. I'm going to have to let Lori or Michelle, do you want to jump in? That term makes me nervous. I never know if I'm going to answer it the right way.
Oh, that's so funny. There's not a line there, but that can certainly be added. And whatever that administrative fee may be, whether they call it an indirect rate or they call it an administrative fee or whatever, you can certainly add that there. It's all, because these are contracts though, it's all a program cost. It would never, it wouldn't be an admin cost, so.
Yeah, and I mean, we had the indirect rate in ours. I just know that I've been getting questions from some other board staff on that topic, so I wanted to make sure that it could still be added.
Yeah, just add it in there. No big deal.
Yeah, thanks for bringing, oops, did I mute myself? No, I didn't. Thanks for bringing that up, Miranda. And thanks for reminding me that I had asked you. I reached out to Miranda this morning. I think most of you know by now that Mississippi Valley has successfully completed an RFP twice now, actually, for their service providers for adult DW and youth. And I wanted to give Miranda or Jack, or I see Jim on the phone, a chance to provide any feedback to your peers about what the process was like. If you have any pointers from things that you learned throughout the process, or if you were doing it again, if you would change, I think that they would find that very helpful. So I'm going to mute and let you guys take the floor if you want. No pressure.
I can give a couple pointers. I would suggest adding in the RFP, just because it's going to be new to previous service providers, that the requirement is to hold the same holiday and work as the state of Iowa, and that also that they're required to have the same business dress code. So the work hours is a big deal, because if you don't have the appropriate people at the center to run the skills floor and other things, that can cause some issues. So I would just encourage you to require your contractors to hold the same office hours. I would also encourage you to edit the evaluation sheet. There's, you can tell, like multiple questions within a points category, like 40 or 50 points are assigned to an entire section. We did it that way the first time we RFP'd, and my RFP committee was not very pleased with that method, so we revised it when we RFP'd again. And I basically just really cut it down and made it more precise and less subjective. So like each line or each question that's addressed was worth 5 points. So our point values went up, but it was easier for them to score the proposals that way. Another thing I would suggest, that your procurement policy is posted, and make sure that you really review that and revise that before you put out your RFPs, and that you tighten up any areas that could be interpreted differently. Just make sure that everything is very clear and it's very clear on what is allowable, especially under your grievance policy as for protests or appeals. And that's all I have right off the top of my head.
Thanks, Miranda. And I just want to point out that the template does include wording about the agreeing to provide service on all business days except those identified as a state holiday. So that is included. And the integrated service delivery model is another spot within the template that is a good place to add information like that. It does not say anything about the dress code though. So that's a good piece to point out if that's important. So. And I think that one thing to point out too, just as a side conversation, is that we have to keep in mind that when we're doing this, some of those things seem silly, but the Title I service providers are one group, one portion of the services that are being provided within an American Job Center or within the Iowa Work Centers. And it is important for customers, and the WIOA really is about integrated services, and it's supposed to be this, we constantly are using the terminology one-stop service delivery, right? And the notion is that a customer can come in any door and be able to receive the services they need, even if that's not directly being provided in the one-stop, for example. So it is important for customers to associate the American Job Center, the Iowa Work Centers with all of those programs, and that there isn't a distinction between programs within the center.
Michelle, this is Jack.
Hi, Jack.
Hi.
You're kind of faint for me. I don't know if anybody else can hear you.
Pardon? Oh.
I'm having a hard time hearing you, Jack. You're very faint.
Okay, is that better?
Oh, there you go. Yep.
Okay, I guess I would start out by saying that I think that the open line of communication, which we're getting from you and the other providers, has really been great. The training sessions have been good. And I guess, having been on the workforce board for Region 9 for quite a while, obviously we were never as involved as we are now. And it's been extremely eye-opening, I'm thinking, to the CEOs. And we're just extremely fortunate that we have Miranda, who kind of, leads us through the path. And I don't know where we would be at this point. We're so far along that we probably wouldn't be if we didn't have the guidance that we get from you and the state board, and especially from Miranda. It's been quite a learning experience. I think we've had at least 4 or 5 trainings, and I should have had that 15 years ago when I first went down to the workforce board when JC retired. But it's been quite a change for everybody, I think, but I think it's going to be great.
Thank you so much for that, Jack. It's nice to hear that. And I'm glad that you all find this information helpful. I know sometimes I kind of cringe and I think, gosh, I feel like I'm just repeating myself, but you know what? It helps it to stick. And it has been such a long time, if ever, that some of this stuff was clearly shared. So I have to say thank you to, obviously, our partners at Mayor and Mayor. Trust me when I say there would have been no RFP templates today without their help. So, and they did a heavy lift on that part. And I think you're right, Miranda's been phenomenal for you all. I'm also very excited that there are a lot of areas that have hired staff to the board that I believe are on the call today too, that are really digging in and helping out and doing the things that they are needing to do. And that's phenomenal. So I think it's really going to be very successful as well. And we have an opportunity to, make sure that continue providing phenomenal services to people in Iowa. That's never been a problem, right? But making sure that we're doing it in a way where we're doing it the right way and we're doing it with the right focus. And I think it's just, there's nowhere to go but up, and we're all doing a phenomenal job. So,
well, I guess
your ability and willingness to be involved has been just great. So keep it up.
As we talked at one of the first trainings when we were in Muscatine, and found out that we weren't in compliance, never knew it at all, that we were never in compliance. And I guess I also kudos to Linda Roush, who is, I've had her on the phone a lot in the past, and she's always been very willing to take the time to listen to me and share her thoughts. And so she's been a really, I really appreciate her efforts too.
Great. She's not on today, but I will let her know you said that for sure. She's phenomenal. Are there any other questions or comments about the RFP piece of today's presentation?
This is Michelle Wilson in Southwest Iowa.
Hi.
Hi, I'm calling in on the phone, obviously. I'm curious if you have any, I know it's a local decision about whether we combine the RFPs or separate adult DW and youth. I'm curious if you have any, any pros and cons for either one of those versions so that our board can make, the best local decision. But if there's any guidance, best practice of how, when you're evaluating which direction an area wants to go.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I will say that I don't have any. I can give you some history to let you know that in the past, Iowa has, when we had the 15 local areas, I believe all but 2 did the combined adult DW youth together. So they had one service provider for all 3 programs. There were 2 local areas that had it separated. I have no idea why or what the history of that was. I would ask Lori or Michelle if they have any comments on that, or if, again, Mississippi Valley, if you have any thoughts now that you've been through the process, those would probably be better opinions than mine.
This is Lori. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other, but just a couple of things to consider. I think the thing that can be a pro on combining the RFPs can also be a con. And that one thing is the availability of qualified service providers. You may be in an area where you've got plenty of potential service providers. And so it makes sense to combine them because it just makes the process more efficient. And that you're going to get, several, or you don't know, but you think that you are going to get several qualified responses. Well, at the same time, you could be in an area that has fewer potential service providers, and combining it could potentially rule people out who would have responded to just one portion. Or who would have responded to just one. So I think, and you acknowledged this in your question, it is a local decision, but I think it's also a matter of what are those local dynamics and what is that local landscape. One thing that you can do, and I've seen this in a variety of places around the country, is when if you release a combined RFP, you could still give people the option to only respond to the adult and dislocated worker portion of it, or respond only to the youth portion of it. You could do that. I don't share that because I think that it is the absolute best thing to do, but it's just another option to present. And then if you did that, respondents would just need to be clear about, what it is they're responding to and those sorts of things. I had one other thought and it has escaped me. Oh, the only other thing that I would mention, and I'm confident that you know this, but just saying it for the record, you wouldn't want to separate adult and dislocated worker. You would want, that's one RFP that is done. So it's really just a matter of, do you include youth or do you not?
Right.
Those are my thoughts.
Lori,
Thank you.
would it be a pro that having the combined, therefore having one respondent, would possibly cut down on the sort of administrative costs associated with running the program?
I think it
Possibly
definitely
make it more
could.
effective,
Yeah,
more efficient use of the funds?
yeah. I think that's.
Okay.
Yes, I think that's a great potential pro. Mhm.
Good
The
question.
other thing too is you could still run two procurement processes, but the same respondents could respond to both, and you could end up with the same entity providing both services, adult dislocated worker and youth. You could still realize the efficiencies in administrative costs, but you chose for whatever reason to do two different procurement processes. That could be something that happens, and it would be fine.
This is this is Miranda. On that note, I would just make sure that when you release your RFPs, you make sure that it's truly competitive and it's not just your current service providers that are aware that it's posted.
That's a great point.
Miranda, was there anywhere, how did you post your RFPs? Did you just post it on your website, or what did you do?
I did just post it on the website. I reached out to some other contacts I had in other states and said, could you share your bidders list with me? And I reached out to, or I just emailed those organizations and asked if they would like to be added to our bidders list. So I don't have a large list, but I've got about 4 or 5 organizations that are on it.
Got it. So, and I'm sure for all of you other staff to the board that are on the call, Miranda's always been willing to share her work, so you could reach out to her as well. They have experience already doing this in Iowa recently, so.
This is Krista Tedrow, and Miranda has been phenomenal. So is Heather. That has been hugely helpful for our area getting up to speed. Also, Linda has been great too. So yes, Miranda and Heather have been a huge resource.
Great.
Hey, Krista, this is Lori with Mayor and Mayor. Just because I'm nosy, what part of the state are you in? What local area?
I'm in South Central
Okay.
Iowa. Yep.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yep, and Lori, Michelle Wilson, who asked the other question, is doing staff to the board for Southwest Iowa. So
Awesome.
where you went to your first training in, where was that? Osceola.
Osceola.
Yeah. Lori is basically an honorary Iowan at this point. She's got the map down. She knows where everybody is.
I do.
Okay, well, let's talk about funding allotments. This won't take too terribly long, but I just wanted to send out a reminder. Oops.
Michelle, this is Jim.
Oh, hi, Jim.
Hey, I want to make one comment because I'm pretty open and probably a little more vocal than most, and I don't know if anybody else will say it, but just a reminder that remember what Miranda said earlier about crossing your T's and dotting your I's during this process. We have had 2 separate situations or issues with our former community colleges. So just cross your T's and dot your I's as you're going through the process to make sure everything's in order. Like I said, they submitted for one portion and then did not come through our local community college. So that's why we're doing some of this process again. So I just think it's fair for everybody that's going through this process to be prepared and trying to watch for it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing. I mean, these calls are for you guys to be able to work together and share your experiences. So I think that's valuable information. Thank you, Jim.
Another thing that was pretty important is we didn't the first time, but ever since then, we do a roll call vote. So that it's in the minutes that because we were accused of not having it the way it was supposed to be. So we do a roll call vote now with our awards.
Okay, great point. Oops, now I'm going backwards. Okay, so quick reminder for the funding. So if you remember, the funding comes out in 2 allotments. There's your program year funding that comes around July 1st, where you get all of your youth funding, and then you get the 3-month money for adult and DW. So the FY21 or the 9-month money is scheduled always to come out around October 1st. I say around because I cannot control when the Department of Labor gives the money to us. And I cannot give it to you until it is given to us by the Department of Labor. So as of today, September 18th, we have not received a notice of award from DOL with the 9-month money for adult and DW. I will continue to watch for that and be prepared to get that out as soon as possible once we do receive it. But one of the things that we will need to be doing here in the next couple of weeks is talking with you again about what amount of money needs, of that 9-month money, needs to go into your existing contracts. So Mississippi Valley, you can ignore me. You're in a different situation because your money is completely contracted to your fiscal agent. And so same thing with Western. And I'm forgetting somebody I can't think right now. But anyway, for those of you that have, and well, Western's not really, that's not true because you do have still temporary contracts. So for those of you that have temporary contracts with existing vendors through December 31st, we've given them contract extensions through December 31st. And a few months ago, we had discussions where you all told me how much of the funding you wanted put into those temporary contracts. So it's time now for us, I think, to look again at where they're at currently with their spending and decide if you need to put any more money into funding or if you want us to just sort of sit on it until we can put it into contract with your fiscal agent. I will say that for those of you that have designated a fiscal agent, this is going to get a tiny bit messy because we're going to be doing multiple things on top of each other, right? IWD is still going to be in those contracts with the existing service providers until December 31st. But right now, we also will start the contracting process with the fiscal agent directly. So there's going to be a little bit of overlap. But this is mostly as a heads up to remind you that that money is coming and that we need to have some discussions again. So I'm going to be scheduling some conversations with you all again, probably towards the end of next week, early the following week, to figure out what that looks like in your local areas. What we'll probably need to do is gather some information from those existing service providers to see what their existing budgets look like to determine whether they even need more money or not and those types of things. So just an FYI that is coming and we'll let you know. In the future, this is not a conversation that we'll need to have, right? Because starting next year, when probably around April, May, June of 2021, when IWD gets the money, we will give it all to you in the fiscal agent contracts, and then you will have local area discussions about how much money is available to go into your contracts with your service providers, et cetera. So this is part of this transition of doing these things kind of in multiple ways for the next couple of months. But one thing I do want to point out is that the FY20 money, so the 9-month money for adult and dislocated worker, it cannot be used for anything that was incurred before 10/1. So if you have a local area that is saying, hey, I need more money to pay my bills from September, they're going to have to find it somewhere else because this money can't be used for anything prior to 10/1. And I know that there's an area out there that's had some questions and I need to get back to you. I'm working on that and I'll hopefully send you something later today. So just a quick note and I'll be in contact again. This is not wanting to work. Here we go. Okay, so one last slide to go over some of the next steps again. As I mentioned at the beginning of the call, I'm working on certifying the local boards. I have some feedback out to several of you. I've certified one so far, have one to finish up, hope maybe today, and things like that. So along with getting those certified, we need to get local board training scheduled. And the original dates, again, we're going to begin in September. I'm pushing those off so that you have plenty of time to get these scheduled in advance, because I know trying to get 19 people, most of whom run a business of some sort, into one room at the same time for training is a difficult thing to do. So we will give you as much lead time as possible to get those trainings scheduled so that as many people on your boards can attend as possible. Because as we've said from the get-go, even though we all have become great friends over the past year and all the work we've done together, the work really shifts to the local boards at this point. And so their training is going to be really important, I think, and very helpful. Once those local boards are in place and we've done some training, one of the tasks that we need to accomplish with the local boards is local area performance negotiations. So nothing to really worry about now. I'm just putting it on your radar as something that will be happening within the next couple of months with the local boards. Along with that, the local plans are going to be required to be done as well. And so we've talked about this before, but just again, the state is required to submit a 4-year WIOA state plan. We did that last spring and it went into effect on July 1st of 2020. Beneath that, each local area is required to submit a local area WIOA plan as well that explains how the local area is going to meet the strategic vision of the state plan. We are working on putting policy out for local plan guidance. It should be available at the end of October after the next state board meeting on October 23rd. And so there will be more information to come on local plans and what that looks like as well. And then lastly, one-stop operator procurement is on our list of key tasks to have been accomplished by December 31st. I think that if you are in a local area where you're at the place where you can do that, great. If not, don't panic and think, oh crap, there's something else I'm supposed to be doing. I'm continuing to work with the Department of Labor Region 5 office on our progress. And I think that, if we can get some information out about this and pretty quickly, then we'll go forward with that. If not, we'll look at moving out that deadline. So I just want to reassure you all that you're not going to be held to the standard of something that we haven't been able to, really dive into and provide you the information you need to do. So more to come on that in the future as well. I think that's my last slide. It is. So are there any questions for today?
Michelle, this is Michelle in Southwest Iowa again.
Yeah.
And I just want to, and this could be a conversation we have separately if we need to, but I'm curious just to be clear on the budget because it is all in transition right now. So the admin carryover, like the program year admin carryover, anything from 10-1 on, would that would be recaptured by IWD and then redistributed to the board. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So,
okay.
And that's a conversation that we can have, Michelle, when we, like I said, I'll schedule a meeting for us. But if let's say that Southwest Iowa has $10,000 in admin that they're carrying over, that is not something that I would put into the contract with Matura right now.
Right.
I would probably hold that back. And once we get our contract in place with your fiscal agent, we would then put that money into contract with the fiscal agent for you. And then it would be available
right.
to the board to use.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And then
Yep.
the youth that was for the whole year, but we have our service contract through the end of the year.
Yep.
Those would be the conversations that we would have that you alluded to determine how the local service provider now is needing any additional funding.
Absolutely. So, and this, I know you're diving in and learning because you weren't here when we had these first conversations, but initially we had conversations back in June and each local area told me how much they wanted to put into contract. I don't think there was any local area that for the youth, even though the entire pot of money was available to the local area on July 1 for youth only, most of them only put, let's say 40% of that or 50% of that into the temporary contract, right? So I think what it'll be is where are they at with their current youth expenditures? Are they on track to spend all of that by December 31st, not spend it all, or do they need more to get them through December 31st, right? And then we can look to say, do we need to add more money or do we not? So I think we're okay, especially with the youth. It's typically the adults in the DW because the 3-month money is not enough to really carry you through where they might possibly need some additional funds at this point. But every area will be unique, which is why I'll set up individual meetings with each area to discuss.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, well, I don't hear any more questions. So it is 12:50. We'll just go ahead and be done and give you back 10 minutes of your day. And It is gorgeous out in Grimes, Iowa this weekend, so I hope the rest of you are having wonderful weather for your weekend and you get to enjoy it. And we will talk in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.